What's happening? Andy here. I am joined today by Steve Rolla from Pros Elite Group. How you doing today, Steve?
Hey, Andy, how are you? It's good to see you again.
I am great. It is sunny and warm here in Rochester for a change, maybe a little too warm. Tell me, where are you? What are you doing? Where are you hunkered down?
So today I'm located in my summer home up in northern Connecticut. As you know, I'm a weather coward. So as soon as the wind starts to blow in Florida, and I sense that there could be a hurricane within a month of me, I immediately vaporize and head to Connecticut. And on the other side of the coin, as soon as there's frost on the lawn, I immediately leave Connecticut and head back down to the warmth of Florida. So for the next 3 or 4 months, we'll be up here in northern Connecticut.
Well, I'm glad you're beating the heat up there in Connecticut, where you told me earlier it's 95 degrees. But I'm sure it's even worse in Florida right now. It's just a tough spell we're all going through.
I went out earlier today, Andy, and I took a look at the thermometer. It said 97 degrees. I quickly looked at my phone. It's 72 degrees in Florida.
Oh,
Something's
no.
very wrong.
That's just nuts, right? So I'm sure that'll fix itself pretty soon. But I went to the Pros Elite Group. You had a training session in Florida and Tampa a few months ago. It was for service technicians. I'd never been to one of those. I'm obviously much more aligned with the sales side, but I'm covering service quite a bit these days. And great show. And we chatted at that one and talked about doing one of these videos about pivot and service, and which we've already done, and I'll put some links in the video below for that. But I thought it'd be a good opportunity to chat with you, find out who's Steve Rolla, what are you doing over there at Pros Elite Group, and then let's talk about some of the stuff that you've got going on the sales side of Pros Elite Group. So a little background. Tell us how'd you wind up where you are, and what do you do for the team over there?
Sure. Yeah, as you know, Andy, I had the blessing to have run 3 different companies. That's where I first met you. My first opportunity to run a company was up in Rochester, New York, and I had a company that ran across the whole breadth of upstate New York, a company called Kex back in the Alco Standard days. And from there, I went to New York City, and I ran Icon's operation in New York City for a short period of time. And then I had the blessing to work for Tom Johnson for 10 years in an environment in Washington, D.C., in Northern Virginia that was part of the Global Imaging Systems Network. And I left that back in 2009 to join my partners, Jerry and Jeff, at the Pros Elite Group. And as you know, they had a spectacular service consulting business. And I offered up to them that, hey, as a former service guy that was lucky enough to become a company president, that I use my service background almost day in and day out to help drive my company, to help drive our organization from a sales perspective. And I thought we could add that to our service consulting offering. And they gave me the opportunity to do it, and away it took off. And today we have a full breadth consulting offering. Jerry and Jeff are the IT and the service side of the equation, and I tend to be the sales and the overall dealer performance side of the equation. So a typical day for me, Andy, can be anything from doing a sales review or an overall operations review of a company. Or this morning, I started out the day by working an acquisition for one of my clients. So my offerings go all over the spectrum of what an independent dealer does. I also had the responsibility of working with my partner, Jeff, to build out the sales module of Pivot. And then just like Jerry and Jeff, that offer that great service management training offering that we provide, I was the one who was charged with the responsibility of building out a sales management training program. So the day is different almost every day of the week, depending on who I'm speaking to and what their needs are. That's how I come in the morning, and I go to work for the Pros Elite Group. So we've been doing this together now for, it's hard to believe, 12 years.
Wow. So for 12 years, you've been doing a lot of data, a lot of analytics and things of that nature. And then right before this pandemic, you guys had launched Pivot, right? So I'm going to give you my understanding, and then why don't you tell us what Pivot really is? Pivot to me is just sort of a big dashboard for dealers, right? That allows them to look at all the metrics on their sales side, their service side. It's modular. They can choose one or the other, or the best blend obviously would be if you have all the data from both sales and service. So Pivot is it's a dashboard that lets you utilize the data that you're collecting on from your company already. Yes?
Yeah, and that's a good start. I mean, we have 4 modules that are included in the Pivot tool. The first one is an extraordinarily powerful dashboard. It's what I tell my partners I would have dreamed to have as a company president. I could walk in the morning, and I could get the answers as to how my organization was performing in every key element of our business, whether it be service, whether it be our parts consumption, whether it be our actual productivity to service individual. I can also take a look at what kind of sales activities have taken place. I can see what we billed yesterday. I can actually run a pro forma P&L just to see where we sit month to date as my company performs. I can take a look at valuing my company. I can take a look at valuing, valuing an acquisition. All of those tools are resident in Pivot, and they're right at my fingertips, and they're so easy to use. So we set out with a simple service module, but then we started to dream a little bit bigger. And I think what we've built today is the first automated process for a dealer to operate his or her business, or for that matter, to expand their business. So I come in on the sales side. As I said, Jerry and Jeff did a masterful job of building out the service side, and I worked with Jeff on the sales side of the equation to answer some simple pain points that I had as a dealer principal that even as I walked away back in 2009, I hadn't resolved in my own mind. I mean, some of the questions that still exist or exist for a dealership that need to be answered as this industry compresses are simple ones, but most people don't have a really good accurate answer, and Pivot will provide that. Simple question: what's my primary opportunity markets? Where should I be sending sales reps? Where should I be spending my marketing dollars? What percentage market share do I have in that territory?
So let me stop you there. So
please.
This is bringing me back to the old days when I was selling like Becky Index and all that stuff, where
sure,
some real basic ways to try to divide up markets into sales territories, based, for us where I was, and I was also part of that Alco standard eventually, before that, the Icon Alco standard team, back down in DC. But we used that to formulate territories. So you're saying, how does this work? You can divide up territories. You can realign your markets using this tool.
Absolutely. So we went a step further, Andy. We developed our own indice using the white collar worker index available from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And we brought that together and into life, into a zip code and into a county. But then we went even a step further and we identified the size of install bases. So I can tell you as an independent dealer, or as any organization for that matter, what kind of a job you've done in penetrating individual markets right down to the zip code. And then I can share with you what that forward-looking opportunity is in that same area, and then prescribe a staffing model that will grow your business vis-a-vis current MIF management and net new business opportunity to the desired goal that you have. So for the first time, you've got an accurate number, and the calculations are being done at lightning speed right in front of your eyes. I remember the first time I calculated market share for a small section of the state of Connecticut when I was with a company called A-Copy. And at the end of 2 days, I had my answer. And I marvel, even when I use my own tool, that when people ask me to calculate the market share in 35 counties in 4 different states, I have that answer for them in 30 seconds. So I can get that calculation done, and we can be moving on to the real important work of putting that right person in that right described opportunity.
You can set up the territories based on opportunity. You can go through the territories rep by rep and actually say, this is our market share in your territory.
That is correct.
What a way to hold a salesperson's feet to the flames when everybody's at X% and they're at Y, right? So amazing granularity with that, actually. So what other modules does Pivot offer? What other types of sales capabilities do they bring to the table?
There are some simple questions that most dealers should be asking, but they don't know to ask until it's too late. And I've lived that nightmare. Nothing would break my heart faster than when a customer would call me, tell me how great my service was, only to tell me that they were leaving me for a competitor because they hadn't seen a sales rep in 2 or 3 years. It's real world. And anybody who listens, anybody who listens to this audio or this taping session will sit back in the chair and go, "Yep, happened to me too." Yep. You always wonder, how could that be possible? You've got great CRMs, you've got great leadership. What's the gap? And the gap is how your ERP fed your CRM or vice versa. And what we built into Pivot was a data cleansing capability immediately that will show you any current customer that you're actively billing and its assignment to a sales rep. And if it isn't assigned, it gets called out immediately. And the end of the nightmare has finally been prescribed. Andy, on every download we do, every initial download we do, there's 3 to 5% of a dealer's base unassigned. In other words, they're waiting for somebody to call on them, and all too often it's a competitor sales rep. So we found the cure to that pain, and I can sleep a whole lot better tonight if I'm a dealer principal knowing that my base is fully covered. But you asked me what other modules exist. I like to think of myself, or think that my career was based on fairness to the people that I got to work with. And during the course of the day, there were some territories that I had many sales reps covering that were always successful, and other territories that no one was ever successful. And I could never figure out the dynamic. And it wasn't just talent that led to one territory being far better performing than another. And Pivot will literally value the dollar value of a machine install base in the sales rep's territory, and then literally look at that net new business opportunity and prescribe a quota. And I watch in disbelief as individuals who have 400 units in their install base have less opportunity, as prescribed in Pivot by accurate calculation, than our sales rep who has 200 units. And it's about the volume that they produce and the mix that's in there, as well as the net new business opportunity. So for the first time ever, an individual company can look at their individual sales reps and say, I can prescribe you an individualized quota based on the actual value of your MIF. Pivot will dollarize the value of the MIF and then dollarize the value of the net new business opportunity. And I can prescribe an individualized quota. But I think there's something else that goes on inside of that dynamic that I love even more. One of the dangers, if there is such a danger of a large MIF, is that your sales rep becomes a farmer. Sure. He or she stops prospecting and then becomes a churner of your base and steals your profit. And I don't think there's a malicious bone in their body that makes them do that. It's just the opportunity that's presented to them, and they operate that accordingly. But in the Pivot world, everybody gets a net new business plan. And that net new business plan is as equally important as managing that MIF. And if the MIF becomes too large that the net new business opportunity can't be pursued, then you as a dealer principal can make the decision to put an extra resource in there to pursue that net new business. So that opportunity is so easily presented now and so equitably based that at the end of the day, I feel good about the way I'm running my sales organization from a fairness perspective and from a company perspective as pursuing the growth that I want to go after. So I have all of the tools at my hands that I've desired all my career, and they operate in one smooth package that's called Pivot.
That's amazing though, when you think about it. And I kind of was chuckling. You're talking about, waking up in the middle of the night, and actually you wake up in the middle of the night. If you have Pivot, if you're one of these dealers signed up to it, you pull up whatever you need and check it out and go right back to bed, right? So,
Absolutely.
You're right. You're able to right size your territories. And the nice thing is, to be able to turn around to a salesperson who's going to get their territory cut, who's been probably, like you were saying, you're not as productive. When you start killing it and you haven't been challenged, it's path of least resistance, right? You do just
Absolutely.
enough. You do just enough. You do like half the copier reps in this industry, just did just enough in school to get through, and they were social as hell. And that's why we're all copier reps, right? So, but that's human nature, and so but to be able to re-examine, reevaluate these territories and say, look, no, we're changing it, and here's the opportunity, here's the revenue that's in your territory, here's how much market share we currently have. You may cut a territory and find out you've got more reps. Never believe this, they never like it, but you may find you have in a cut territory, you may have more opportunity because the lines were redistributed. So it's but at the end of the day, it gives the principal, it gives the sales manager, it gives the service manager the ability to make a decision, an informed decision, because there's data behind it, and they're using their numbers, not just industry numbers from estimates or whatever. They're using their actual numbers. You help them import and feed all of their data, yes, right, into the
Absolutely.
and so it helps with informed decisions. So the Pivot thing to me is just kind of mind blowing. I remember when you guys were rolling it out at the RICO event a couple of years ago when I saw you before the whole virus thing, and it was amazing. And then you kind of put the brakes on it until we got a little past that, and you were able to start visiting dealers and rolling it back out again. And now it's in full throttle. And I know several dealers that are on board and using it. While I have you, and before we wrap up, I did want to talk to you about, I love the service training that you did, and I mentioned it earlier, and it was an eye opener, and the people in that meeting were just, I thought what the coolest thing was, the networking that went, they're sitting with their peers. And a lot of the times people in that role don't get a chance to do that. They were able to sit down with other service technicians, other service managers, talk about common issues. But then at the end of the day, they got to see presentations about, the capabilities that these products have and that they're using from you. Are you going to do anything like that for sales? Are you going to do, is it only service, or do you do sales meetings like that as well?
Absolutely, we are. As a matter of fact, the whole pivot world has caused us to relook at our entire sales management training program. Over the past 3 years, we've trained over 500 sales managers in the arts of achieving things like the activity results that are desired to deliver sales results. Before I close out on Pivot, I just want to bring up one thing about our offering that makes us entirely different, and that is with Pivot on the service side or Pivot on the sales side comes Jerry, Jeff, and Steve. We don't drop a software package on your computer and say, hey, good luck to you. We offer unlimited consulting to that capability. So if you're using the service side of Pivot, you're going to get Jerry, Jeff, or Andy. If you're using the sales module of Pivot, you're going to get Steve. And unlimited doses. Whatever you want to use us for, you get. Much the same, we put this training program together to support the power that Pivot brings to the sales side of the house. But we also decided to take a look at perhaps what we don't know. Because I'll acknowledge there are a lot smarter sales minds out in the streets than today that exist in my head. So I went out and sourced those people and said to them, tell me about what changes I should bring to sales management training. And the first thing that you hear is the obvious. There's a number of industry changes that occurred during and perhaps are still occurring after the pandemic has started to subside. So in addition to coaching sales managers in the processes, necessary to achieve the results of activities, I've got some really great sales minds giving me information and building modules. I get up every morning and start at 6 o'clock in the morning with a sales manager that I have a lot of respect for, who teaches me what those modules need to look like. So as an example, this morning, we did a whole module on virtual management and the support of a sales rep in a virtual environment. I'm getting asked that question all day long. The sales reps need to come back to the office. And if they don't, how do I manage them at the end of the day? And there's a process, and we're going to teach it. We're going to teach the art of virtual prospecting. I mean, the critical skills that are involved in video messaging. Everybody wants to be on LinkedIn and everybody wants to be doing something in social media. But when you get there, what is it that you're doing? Well, video messaging, is one of those critical skills that we're going to be teaching sales managers how to coach in and how to develop in their sales reps. Conducting webinar-based demonstrations may seem simple, but for those who haven't done it before or haven't spoken in front of a camera before, that can be an awkward experience for them for the first time. Developing accurate and timely forecasts based on new criteria. We have a 5-star process that we're going to be teaching in the forecasting process. And then finally, if there was ever a point in time that articulating a compelling business process improvement and talking to a complex buying team and then putting together what I call a prescriptive proposal that touches on all of those elements of training, it's now. And we're going to be training a whole element and a whole module of our training course in that. So that's just 5 of the exciting pieces that we're going to be talking about. Recruiting, integrating social media, we're going to be talking about it. Virtual onboarding, we're going to be talking about it. Introducing the hybrid model to go after production copiers, we're going to be talking about and training in it. Account reviews that focus to desired outcomes for customers, we're going to be training in it. So we're excited about the new process. We're hoping we can get it rolled out in August, no later than September. And we're going to anticipate that we're going to be bombarded with applicants for that class. And we look forward to getting it to the market.
It sounds exciting. If I was in sales, I would definitely want to go to something like that. It's just an eye opener. You've got more technology now. You've got a lot of great minds. And, for those of you who don't know, the people in this company, made millions at massive organizations in this industry in their time when they ran dealerships. This is not advice and information that's coming, from a know-it-all that just, is just shouting from a rooftop and saying, here's what we sell. This is coming from people who walk the walk and talk the talk and have done this before, right? We all love Hay and these guys, Johnson, and we just the people in this industry that you respect. They've done this job. They've done it in the field, And now, I think a lot of dealers are benefiting from these programs that you guys have sort of built out of your experiences, first on the service side, now on the sales side. So how many, one event, two events later this year? You said August, and
We'll probably do one in August and September. We'll probably do something closer to December also.
cool. Well,
And that I would bet on being the southern location, but that's we'll get that planned as soon as we get the final curriculum out. One thing I just want to add before I close it out on the sales training is when my partners, Jerry and Jeff and Andy, go out and do service management training, it's the only way you should run a service organization. And I thoroughly believe that because every company I ever had ran to that model. And it's perfection. On the sales side, it's a little bit different. I always begin the class by saying, this is a way, not the way. There's a lot of ways to run a sales organization, and I'm very comfortable with that. But what we bring to this training is a very simple message. If you have a process that's working and it's hitting the desired market share results that you have for your company, God bless us, don't change it. Use it, rock and roll with it. On the other hand, if you have a process that you're not happy with and you're looking for a new way, we've got one and they work. So it's a way, not the way on the sales side of the house. So don't worry about coming to an environment where ego will be the lead dog in the training culture. It's just the opposite. It'll be highly participative, and we'll share with you ways that work in the event that you have one that doesn't work. And that's the end of my story.
Steve Rolla, this has been an absolute pleasure. We will follow up. We'll do another one of these. I think when we get a little bit closer to your event, maybe we can talk a little more detail about the layout, the agenda, who should come. And but I think this was to me very educational, and I learned a lot about the service side when I went to your meeting. But we didn't get a lot of time to talk about the sales, so obviously it's very close to my heart, and so I'm glad we got to have this chat. And the program just sounds amazing, and I love how it's modular and you can just plug it into, you don't have to buy it all. You buy what you want, you use what you want. Or you can get into the full package and have your service and sales people teams talking to each other, so you can look at all the data from your full organization from as 30,000 feet or higher, and just get the full picture, right? It's just, there's not a lot of ways to do that, and you offer not just a plain ERP and CRM and all that. It's just, this is made for the imaging industry, right? And you're not just, one of the things I remember from training years ago that just, I hated it. My owner brought a guy in for some sales training, right? Just generic sales training, and everything he said was probably great, but I couldn't get past the fact that you don't know what we do. You're not doing what I do. It's different out there. I don't care what he sold. And I think there's some commonality. There really is, now that I'm not an arrogant kid anymore. But it just, I couldn't get past the fact that this guy wasn't banging on doors, getting thrown out of buildings. And you know what I mean? Like, it was just too senior. And it was just one of those, he doesn't even know what it's like out there. And he'd never sold. He's just telling us how to sell. And I just, you have a lack of respect. I think there's a lack of respect sometimes for that. And that's not you guys. You guys have done it before. As I said, you walk the walk, and I look forward to coming down there and going to that sales meeting. Thank you for this, Steve. This has been great.
One thing I want to correct real quick for you is during the introductory year of Pivot, everybody gets every module for the same price as the service module. So if you're thinking about Pivot and you've seen Pivot, jump on it now. We're going to offer it all modules together at one price, which is the service module price. So we're excited about making that offering. And I can tell you that I'm a busy boy. We just closed one of the largest dealers in the United States. And I'll tell you, I'll leave you with this. This was the close, and it was exciting for me. He said to me, if you can show me the net new business opportunity by zip code in these 3 states and these 3 counties, and he gave me specific zip codes he wanted to see them in. And in less than 2 minutes, I had that information back to him in a PDF file. And he went to his owner and said, have to have this. And we got the order the next day. So
nice.
We're excited about what Pivot can do and how we can close this up for a lot of folks. And I'm anxious to talk to anybody who's interested.
Well, we will include your contact information below, and some other links as well. But thanks so much. This has been great, and we will talk soon, Steve. Thank you.
Right. I never thought I'd say this to somebody in Rochester, but stay cool.
Yes, stay cool. You too. Take care. Bye, Steve.
Bye, Andy.